All right, welcome everybody. First, I just want to say thank you for attending our talk on supply chain leakage becoming the norm. My name's Charles Adams. I'm the founder, or one of the CEO of Exploit Strike, and also co-founder, along with Teddy. He's our Chief Information Security Officer and also a co-founder. I'm an 8-year Marine Corps veteran. Interned at Google when I was in college, which was kind of cool. Everybody knows who Google is, but yeah, and we have Teddy. He did some time at Cisco Systems and a bunch of other cool tech companies. He's a PhD student or student at the University of Delaware. He should be graduating really soon. Very interesting guy, and yeah.
So about 10 months ago, we were asked, we were doing a pen testing for a health insurance organization, and the CISO asked us, hey, I have a concern. I'd like to know if there's any source code out there. Can you do some OSINT, start with GitHub? And right away, when we started looking for, seeing if they had any code leakage, we found hundreds of repositories that were false positives, meaning that people were making their own, programs or APIs, but it's not really affiliated with the organization outside of the domain being in there, right? And then we stumbled upon this awkward gem. A recent senior engineer had just retired. He had been working for the organization for 20 years. And he obviously hadn't been doing dev work towards the end of his career, but decided to, when he retired, take all his notes that he acquired throughout his entire time and dump them in a public repository. And his notes were so immaculate, it was overwhelming for us. There was thousands of files, most of which were Word documents with screenshots containing all of the secrets for the different VPNs, how to connect to them, the two-factor tokens, and his level of access, which senior had admin access for quite a lot of things, including every single EC2 instance, how they were deployed, what the admin credentials were for that, and the dashboards for Azure, Entra, and AWS. We tested about 8 credentials, and after a while, we got a little overwhelmed, had to disclose with the CISO right away. And he was shocked because this had been public for 5 months, and he has a team and pays a lot of money for tools that's supposed to prevent this type of stuff. And so that was our first thought, how is that possible? Day 2, we shifted to Postman and then found a different kind of leak. 7 years prior, or back in 2020, when this health organization was using a supply chain vendor to do some integration work for all of their core functions, providers, members, patients, integrations, and things like that. The IAM access and all 7 of the core function API admin access, both of which were super admin privileges, were all in there, including all of the different endpoints and how to use them. All production. And the first thing when we disclosed that with the CISO, he said, oh, that's from 2020. We rotate our secrets every 90 days. That's not a problem. I said, no, these are application secrets. These are non-human identities. Let me show you. So I used curl, took just one of the APIs, and I said, all right, so here I go. Now I'm going to authorize my curl application to do what? I used the patient one because we had, in the pen test, we had a fake pen test patient account, right? And so I revealed how I was able to expose all of my patient records for our information. But then I explained that because this application manages all of the patients, we could change the ID and then view any patient record. And this has been public for many years. It's just waiting for someone to take PII from this health insurance company, right? So right away, we were like, okay, how is this possible? They're paying for tools. They're not paying a small amount of money. They're paying a lot of money. And they actually have 2 other tools that they were shopping around, trying to decide if they wanted to integrate more attack surface management capabilities. And so when we started digging and looking at some of these tools and what they were doing, we realized that they were so focused on reducing false positives, and most of the platforms and tools out there, which we support, are focused on preventing leakage from happening, which is great, fantastic. But to reduce false positives, most of them actually will ignore binaries, will ignore archive files, will ignore Word documents, and if the few that do actually process Word documents do not deal with images and screenshots, which older developers love to use for some reason. So what we found is the definition of oftentimes when a repo contains a leak spun up probably about 12 years ago when some of these big platforms that we know of today were getting off the ground. And they classified them as accidental misconfiguration. You know, the developer on-prem committed some code 2 in the morning and unintentionally put the environment file out there, and so some access credentials were leaked, right? Well, that makes sense at a time when many organizations hadn't quite yet migrated over to cloud environments, and we're still on the fence of like if they want to go completely off-prem and on-prem, and many organizations, including big ones, had more developers on staff. Today, that's not the case. Today, many organizations choose to use service providers, have migrated now to cloud environments, and do not have on staff their own development. They actually rely on third parties. And so, ironically, what we're finding, because we're choosing to look at the open internet space outside the perimeter, that with developers who have personal accounts, and we are choosing to unpack binaries, documents, machine learning to do OCR for images, most of the leaks that we find, I'll give you an example. There was a developer who every couple of years obviously worked for a different company, and that seems to be a common trend with today's developers, and had a directory for every company that he worked for. And in the beginning, he would run tools, he would put all of the projects he was working on and everything he had access to. So he would run Bloodhound, Azure Hound, and other pen testing tools and hacker tools to enumerate all the systems that he had access to, database dumps, and then Excel files, which had different organizations, all of the usernames and passwords if he was able to access them. And then you could see for the next organization, as time went on, his hunting capabilities improved. He got better. He improved his portfolio. That is the type of leaks that we're finding right now. It's not just a developer accidentally committed something affecting their own organization. No, it's a developer that leaked something that's affecting multiple organizations. No longer is it, I don't think we should be classifying it as an accidental misconfiguration. So to help us sort through this stuff, especially for organizations we do work for, we actually had to build our own tool, leaning off the tools that exist, but adding the capabilities that they choose to ignore or don't process. We do support all the tools. I just don't put that out there. So as a security organization, most of our clients are with the banking sector, credit unions, health insurance, and corporate legal firms. And so our data does actively reflect that, right? But if you cover up those sectors, we can only fit so many of the industries, right? The remaining industries were all things that we found by looking at the industries we work with, and there's a pretty even distribution of all of the industries affected. We've disclosed in the past few months almost 200 disclosures involving 300 repositories affecting 1,500 confirmed organizations. I say confirmed because that number is actually higher. It's just there's a lot of organizations that are in acquirement or merging, and acquisitions, and we just haven't classified them or confirmed, the independence yet. And 15% of them represent Fortune 100 companies and a few global conglomerates, a term I didn't even know until we encountered one. And one interesting thing I want to point out, I wasn't going to include this. So first party, third party, unknown is our biggest category. Unknown because even some of these service providers, these supply chain vendors that are doing the integration work as a third party operating to an organization, we're seeing an increase in them choosing to contract developers on demand. So not all service providers now actually have their own developers on staff to do integrations for clients. So it's getting trickier for us to classify, is this a first party, third party, fourth party, or somewhere down the line, right? And because of that, it's also very difficult for an organization asking another organization who's contracting another team to have visibility on all of those developers just on what we know the accounts that they have, and we don't know majority of their personal accounts that they have.
All right, on to a couple case studies. So we all know leaks happen, whether they're a first-party leak, come from an employer at the organization, contractor at the organization. Early on, so as Teddy said, we made 200 disclosures in the past few months. It's been a really long security research journey for us, but we finally started actually reaching out to companies and telling them. So it's really hard to get a hold of a company and to gain a listening ear, right? If you're big like Amazon or Google or I don't know, whatever, you can use BugCrowd or HackerOne for vulnerability reporting. But if you're smaller, like a credit union, you probably don't have an intake for leaks or vulnerabilities that people find. So generally, our escalation path to the organization is submit a bug bounty, vulnerability disclosure, that's preferred, they have a process for it. But if they don't have that, we might have to buy some phone numbers and start calling. So I buy phone numbers for this credit union. So I should go back to what we found. On a GitHub repository, we found domain administrator credentials for what looked like was a credit union, and it was so bad that I thought it might be a joke. It might be a honeypot or a personal project. But I should probably tell the credit union anyway. It's been out there for 2 years. Maybe they don't know about it. Maybe they do, and they already rotated the credentials, just haven't been able to take it down. So I'm calling some security personnel at the credit union. No one's answering. So I call their help desk. Somebody answers the first time, and I tell them, hey, I found your domain admin password out on GitHub. We should probably talk a little bit more. And they say, okay, yeah, I'll relay it up the chain of command. Somebody will call you back. I called them again the next week. Didn't hear anything. I called them again the next week and say, okay, I'm going to read your domain administrator password to you. Are you okay with that? They said, yeah, if you have it, read it to me. Okay. Capital A at exclamation point 1. He said, okay, stop. Okay, that's the password. Okay. Someone will call you shortly. So, make the disclosure with the credit union, and they take it down, and it's a good day for everybody. Though you needed to be internal to their environment to use the credential. I mean, what could you do with a 200-person credit union with their domain admin password? You send a couple good phishing emails, you're in, and you already got the keys to the kingdom. So that's a first-party leak, right? So everybody knows, companies leak their data. Sometimes it happens. Big deal, right? Well, the third parties that have access to your environment will also leak your data because humans exist in your company, humans exist in their company. So we deal heavily with credit unions, as Teddy was saying. It's sort of they're high risk tolerant, very low risk tolerance, and it was an industry at the time we were trying to break into, so we're trying to get friendly with credit unions. And as part of our security research journey, we come across a lot of source code. Some source code is more meaningful than others, right? It's really bad when you hard code all of your credentials into your .properties or .env files, and it's all committed to GitHub. So we're monitoring for a credit union. It was one of our clients. And on the first day, we come across a very large repository. It's a bunch of source code. We triaged it, and in our initial triage, we go up a directory, and we see that there's a different directory for each one of this company's clients, each one a credit union. There were 33 credit unions. 23 had production. They were labeled prod. Really bad day. In each directory was a username and password and a couple client secrets, the different applications that the vendor owned, but also that each credit union owned. So there were usernames and passwords to each core banking platform in each credit union that was externally accessible. Very bad day. We were able to contact the vendor and have it taken down, and each one of those credit unions was contacted, credentials rotated, but it happens, and it happens a lot. It's sort of unsettling. We go back to this slide. Almost half of these are from, or I say at least 20 leaks that we found we know are from third parties, and about half of which we think are, but we're not exactly sure because attribution is kind of hard when an alias is patback1234. So
Yeah, and it's also kind of challenging too when the third party decides to contract out the dev work or the dev team or the integration team. Then it's not truly a third party, it's a fourth party or a fifth party, right? When we do these disclosures, oftentimes because of, it's not just a secret, it's not just a credit card number, it's not just the merchant. The leak that he was just speaking to, I think there were 7 or 8 merchant account numbers, banking numbers, the things that handle the payment processing for the bank, for customers, for businesses, right? When we do these disclosures, it's not just the CISO and the SOC engineers that often are in the meeting. They'll bring in usually someone from legal, someone from their asset management, someone from risk management, someone from threat intelligence. And what the most common thing we get outside of how did you find this when I pay a lot of money to prevent this from happening is where do I put this? Do I put this in legal right now because I know this is about to go to litigation? They already know that's going to happen, and they know that asset management is going to work with that team. But risk management also needs to do an assessment on it, and then all of the customers that are affected, any of those secrets, especially if it's back-end and core function stuff, the SOC team needs to deal with and just make a decision on whether or not, oh no, all of the MFA two-factor tokens are out there too. Should we just reset all of them, right? So what we're finding is that because for so long in industry, we've got so accustomed to these tools and dashboards to prevent leakage, which is great. We've allowed the definition of accidental, misconfiguration to a leak as a category that organizations, we have yet to find one that has a good plan on how to deal with this type of leak. So that's kind of why we're here. That explains exposure treatment. Yeah, the best defense, in my opinion, and I could be opinionated here, is to have a plan. I understand prevention is great security. We support that. We're not against it. We're not trying to tell you to change your tools. But what we are saying is have a plan for the worst case scenario you didn't think about could happen, right? Oftentimes when we bring in developers to do integrations of back-end core functions, we often don't even monitor those developers for their activity because we want them to integrate our stuff in a smooth and timely fashion, right? What we're not expecting, though, is, and I don't think many organizations realize this, even though it's in the contract, for some reason, developers like to take, especially if they're overseas, they like to take all their code with them, just when it's about to be in production. And so if we're watching a Postman repository, we'll actually see, oh, okay, looks like they're working on 8 different integrations. These 2 are in UAT still. This one's in Sandbox, so they just started that one. This one's in staging. This one's in production. You can almost see and just wait a few more days and then, oh, that one's production. Oh, that one's production. And when the developers like to put the production stuff, it's always the cleanest. It's always organized, right? And vibe coding, a lot of these supply chain vendors that we're finding too we've seen an increase in vibe coding stuff. Vibe coding is great. I'm not against AI. AI organizes everything really nice and neat, including all of the access credentials and everything that they're working on, right? So we've actually seen we've gotten an influx of more of these supply chain leaks with the assistance of vibe-coded repositories that developers are choosing to take out of the organization and put away. One of the things that I know, and no organization will ever share their security vault or secrets vault with another organization, and we don't recommend that, right? Imagine yourself, you're a developer, and you're trying to do 7 integrations for 7 different organizations. You have different access, ways to connect to each different environment, and you're the manager to manage all of these. Those are the ones that are the most scary to us because they have the highest level of access, and they will put all of the access stuff usually in one Word doc. And it's almost like if you find that doc, it's game over. But it's like, dude, you're like the senior management. Why are you doing this? I don't know. I don't know exactly. I have ideas, I have theories, but we don't really, we can't tell you how people think and why people do what they do. And why developers feel that it's okay to take code and take it with them? Probably because they're pressured to do so many integrations, and what worked here might work there. It might work there. Right? So all you future developers out there, please. Oh, okay. And that's that.
All right. 0 minutes left. Thank you for our talk on supply chain leakage becoming the norm. If you have any questions, please feel free to find us afterward. We've got tons of war stories and funny disclosures. So, thanks.
I got one tangent.